Hit subscribe to the DIY Writer to support your hardworking authors and also lessen your chances of ending up as a victim in their next book. Join me at the first annual Icarus Book Convention, May 8th and 9th. This conference has a great lineup of speakers, including little old me, talking about podcasts, vlogs, and other neat author stuff. Go to Icarus, IQARUS Book Con, CON.com for more information. Hope to see you there. This is Jeff from the DIY Writer Podcast. Today we have USA best-selling author Melinda Curtis. Melinda, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, thanks. How are you?
Great. Cool. Everything's cool up there in Oregon?
Yes, everything is definitely cool. If you're coming from California, it's about 10 to 15 degrees colder every day.
Oh, that's got to be hard to get used to.
You know, it is a little bit hard to get used to. And actually, we have a little dog who she will refuse to go out some mornings because it's too cold until I find her sweater.
Wow. I can imagine. I've got a little dog that will run out and then beg to come back in when it's snowing out. And then, so finally you let her in, you think, okay, she's done her business. And it's a 50-50 shot whether or not she just stops and pees right in front of you as she walks into the door, or she actually did it outside. It really depends on how she's feeling, but...
No, this dog definitely needs a potty partner, a sweater and a potty partner, because otherwise she will walk out, kind of pick her feet up gingerly and turn around and be like, no, it's not happening.
Not doing this. Oh, dogs. I don't know. It's funny, the personality, especially small dogs, how profound it is sometimes and how exasperating it can be.
Right? Yeah, it's kind of like potty training a child, and there's some successes and there's some failures, and you just kind of say, okay, I'm going to roll with it. We went from having big Labradors, we had two big Labradors, to two little dogs, and it was really hard for my husband at first, but then our kids moved out. And he was like, well, at least the dogs still want to cuddle with me and, sit and watch a movie.
Yeah. The only thing that I have against small dogs is that when they get mad, that whole potty training thing just goes out and they just poop and pee wherever they think it's almost like they set little traps for me every now and then.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Luckily we haven't come across that yet, but
I've got a lopsel doodle thingamajigger or whatever. And she just, she'll be fine for a couple of weeks, and all of a sudden she'll get mad because, if she gets left home for 8 hours, it's going to be a rough night, and you turn on the light and you look down before you jump out of bed because, she'll set these little traps for you, and it's totally on purpose. I mean, it's just totally on purpose. And you just look at her and she's just like, yeah, go ahead, step down, but
it's funny because in the romance world, I have editors say to me, when you write this book, can you make sure to include a dog? Because people love it when you put a dog in there. So you kind of have to think about, okay, so what kind of dog am I going to put in there? Usually I put one in for comic relief, but they need to be a little bit better behaved than your dog, no anger issues. Although in my latest release, I did have a dog that had anxiety.
I had to I didn't have to, but somebody suggested I did the same thing in one of my books. So I put a little rat terrier in there that ends up being a hellhound. Yeah. Yeah, it's a nice dog.
Contradiction.
Yeah, well, he gets much bigger. His name is Sparky. Anyway, so enough about this. Let's talk about your books. How about Dream a Little Dream?
Oh, Dream a Little Dream is a fun. I tend to write on the lighter side, so that's a small town rom-com about a bull riding cowboy who's broken his leg and he's come back to town to recuperate, and he wants to get back together with this high school sweetheart who it's in remote Colorado. And there's this funny law I saw once about Colorado is in where there are very few judges. If a judge dies or passes away or has to retire quickly for a medical reason, they can just appoint whoever they want to take their place. So she's been appointed the temporary judge.
Okay.
And he, you know, she's originally from the wrong side of the tracks. And so when he comes back and wants to get back together, she's like, you know, I'm not, you know, you're the playboy, I'm now the judge, and I need to be this upstanding citizen. So it allows me to have a lot of comedic situations. And then of course I throw in a dog who has separation anxiety. So she has to take him in his little carrier, you know, thunder carrier, to make him not be anxious, and put it underneath her desk. And he has gas when he has panic attacks, so he tubes during court. And there's some, this is a series that has matchmaking widows that are trying to teach the cowboy how to be more romantic.
I'm not a big consumer of romance, but I do find that funny, especially the dog with gas. I can see where that would be.
You know, there is something about Saturday Night Live humor that you can slip into any book, you know, whether it's a book that could be made into a Hallmark movie or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Saturday Night Live humor works really well. I'm just kind of imagining this guy getting thrown in front of the judge and, you know, in chambers, and also, oh my gosh, you know, sorry about my dog.
Yeah. Well, at first she's horrified, and so she doesn't admit it's her dog.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then she's in one scene, she's carrying him down the hallway before people realize that there's a dog in this carrier. He's kind of, she's draped things over him a little bit, and he's passing stinkers down the hallway. Yes.
Oh, that's
this book will probably never be made into a Hallmark movie because of some of the potty humor, I think.
Yeah, but on the other hand, maybe you'll get a, you know, like USA or somebody will pick it up and do a rom-com out of it. Maybe Netflix.
Yeah, I don't know. I have had one of my books has been made into a TV movie, and I have kind of brushed shoulders and circled around Netflix and Hallmark for other deals. And there are certain things that are, you have to kind of have the right formula, the right mix, the right energy. And then there are certain plot points that they don't like.
So what book was made into a TV movie?
There's a book called Dandelion Wishes.
Okay.
Which was about a woman that she and her best friend were coming back from a vacation and were in a car accident, and her best friend's brother blames her, although the woman is still alive, but she has some healing to do. The friend has some healing to do. So it's about the heroine falling in love with her best friend's brother.
Oh.
And the movie is called Love in Harmony Valley, and it stars Amber Marshall, who is the star of Heartland, which is a Canadian small town horsey thing. She's like a horse whisperer. And my husband and I went on set I guess they filmed about a year and a half ago. It was released last summer, and it was pretty amazing how this actress Amber Marshall could just like turn her emotions on and off, you know, just like cry.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's amazing to watch that, because, you know, you'll see her kind of look down and kind of prep, and then they call action, and she just comes on and plays the scene so beautifully, you know, and you're like, oh my gosh. We were in the video tent, so we were away, so we're not in her line of sight, and we're watching her on the monitors, you know, and then leaning out to see outside the tent, see what she's doing. So it's pretty amazing process.
Do you mind talking about that experience? I mean, from start to finish, was it rough to, I mean, they approached you and said, okay, we'd like to make a movie out of this, I assume, or did you have somebody?
Well, different publishers treat entertainment rights differently. So Harlequin holds the entertainment rights to a book. You usually sign that. So as long as they hold your licensing agreement, they can decide who to accept an offer from.
Okay.
So they accepted this offer and they just kind of emailed me one morning and said, hey, by the way, this is how much we're paying you for your rights for this movie to be made. And we're going to be sending you the script, and asking for your input. So what people don't tell you behind the scenes is a production company is like any business, right? So they're making movies and they're selling movies to different networks. So when you see in the beginning of a film on a TV, it'll say, produced by whoever.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, it was Brainpower Studios out of Toronto. And they sell to Lifetime and Hallmark and USA, and they sell to Canadian networks and they sell to French networks. And so what they do is they offer a portfolio of movies that they say, okay, so you want to build up your entertainment line. This one, my movie was actually sold to Up TV. So they were selling a package of romances to Up TV.
Mm-hmm.
And they had just completed, before they started writing my script, a movie that had a grandmother who had a form of dementia. And so in my book, Dandelion Wishes, the grandmother has sundowner syndrome, which is when you get older or you have other illnesses affecting you, at the end of the day, you tend to be a little bit loopy. So she loved Broadway musicals. So she, the book opens as she is in her rain boots performing Singing in the Rain kind of thing. So she was very comedic, and she had, throughout the book, she had her storyline. So as I'm reading the script, the first thing they change is she's very militant. The grandmother is very militant and has anger issues. And I'm like, oh, whoa, what happened here? She's like a beloved character in town in this series. Like, she shows up in other books. And you have to kind of step back from that and say, okay, so as a business, and they told me this was why they did it, but you have to understand, they didn't want to sell movies that were too similar, that had supporting cast that were,
mm-hmm.
Suffering from a form of dementia. So that's one thing. And then they wrote the first draft that I saw. The hero was very, very mean, like unmotivated mean. You know how when you write characters, people can take them the wrong way if they don't have proper backstory. So he was just mean on the script pages, so I kind of pointed that out. And then they told me that they wanted to film in the fall when the vineyard was full and lush,
mm-hmm.
right before harvest. So I heard nothing. I didn't know if they made the changes. I heard about casting in August. I think I first heard in May. I saw something, an announcement. Harlequin sent me an announcement of the casting of Amber Marshall in August. And, they were so excited. And I actually had never heard of Heartland before, but it's a big TV series that actually runs on Up TV, and internationally it's a big series, and it's on Netflix, and there's like 12 or 14 seasons. So it's been running since Amber Marshall was a teenager to now she's in her 30s. And so all these things were starting to come together. And then they said, they probably gave me 2 weeks notice to come out and see the film, it being filmed.
Yeah.
So it was interesting to see that. So then I finally got a script to see when we got on set, and I was like, okay, so they did make changes and everything. And I think Amber Marshall also requested changes. So I think as an author, you have to kind of say, what's in it for me, and how is this going to benefit me, and how is it going to, every author probably wants to see their book come to life in other mediums. It was interesting, but I do feel like my readers ask me all the time, like, oh, I finally saw it and I was disappointed about this or disappointed about that. And I have to kind of say, well, because, if you're M&M Mars and you're selling candy bars, you don't want to sell all the same candy bars to a grocery store. You won't get all those slots.
Right.
So I understand when they're making movies, why they have to make some of these changes that are going on.
Was that frustrating to you at all, or was that just you understood it and just kind of went with it?
I understood it because I have a business background. Before I began writing full time, I worked in corporate America. And so that part I understood. But there was one point where we were looking at the dailies, and some Harlequin people had come that day, and they were looking at the dailies, and they hadn't seen the script, and all they had done was read my book. And so they turned to me and they said, why is this different? And I was kind of caught flat-footed, like, here I am with the producer and saying, well, I think, you have to ask them. Like, I didn't want to answer and say, well, they took my beloved grandmother character and made her, it was a scene with the grandmother being really harsh and kind of angry. And so there are kind of waves, and you don't know what to expect. It's not like you've been in these situations before.
Right. In a lot of the groups, like in Facebook and stuff like that, when authors first put out, their first book, their second book or whatever, and somebody says, oh my God, you should make a movie out of that. I mean, some fan or something like that. And they're always like, oh my gosh, and they'll, hope and wish and everything else. But, I don't think a lot of people realize what it takes to get there. Number one, and number two, it's a crapshoot whether or not you're going to be picked or not. I mean, like you said, it's really, they're looking for a product to fill a slot. So they need this much inventory of this type of genre, and then they're going to fit it so that it's portrayable on that medium. It's not
literally it was, I think, we need a book set in a winery, and Harlequin said, okay, we have so many authors who write winery books. Since that time, I've been working with someone to do treatments of my books, and then to do kind of more rough outlines. So pitches, treatments, kind of rough outlines of how a script would play out from a book.
Sure.
So, that process too. So I had the Netflix children's division looking at creating a series about one of my book series, which has a talking Saint Bernard. So, but not everyone can hear the talking Saint Bernard, right? I mean, he comes, his owner is a Navy SEAL, and this dog gets dog sit a lot, and he comes with these kind of ginger snap dog cookies that look like people cookies. So if people eat them, they can hear what the dog his dog's thoughts are.
That's clever.
So they were, we were kind of circling around right before COVID came. We did our second treatment, and then, kind of fell by the wayside. So I don't even know where that is now. I think people have probably moved on and have other stuff going. So it literally is, you have to have thick skin. You can't, go out and buy a new car just because someone asks you to take a treatment and write a script. It's pretty much, the luck of the draw, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Like I said, there's a lot of people that I know that are authors, and they've, written a book or two or whatever, and they're like, oh my God, I can't wait to get this. Yeah, you're not going to get that into a movie right now. It's got to get some traction. It's got to sell, number one, and it's got to pique somebody's interest somewhere, which is, that's tough, and
I mean, literally the skill, if you're a writer and you want to pursue this for some of your books or your short stories or whatever, you need to hone your skills on how to sell it, how to do the pitch, how to do a treatment, how to hone your interactive skills with people so that you can talk to, potential producers. I've had friends who've had series optioned by big Hollywood producers, and have the production team have infighting, and so the deal falls apart. I mean, there's so many things that are out of your control. I had a series launch last year during the shutdown. The first book came out during the shutdown. And I think Target and Barnes and Noble cut down their numbers like 2 weeks before the book was supposed to come out. They're like, we don't think we can take this many books, right? So none of that is in your control. And if you let that eat you up inside, you're not going to make it for a long time in this business, right? I mean, you're constantly pedaling, and
Right.
if a car swerves too close to you while you're pedaling, you're like, okay, I got to keep going. You do it for the love of creating.
I think a lot of, when I look at or talk to other authors and we talk about like, the advertising and the promotions and the things that people do to, get their books out there, and when it's time to stop that stuff and move on. And, I mean, there's all sorts of ebbs and flows that you kind of have to worry about and deal with during that time. But, there's a lot of authors out there that just write a book, publish it, and say, okay, come find me. And it does not work like that. It does not. It could be the best book that everybody would love it if they read it. But if you can't put that out there and promote it, they're never going to find it in the sea of books that are out there.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. I do fairly well when I advertise my indie books and some, I don't often advertise my traditionally pubbed books because I have no control over like pricing for one thing. And I can't advertise on Amazon, even if the book is sold on Amazon, if I'm not the publisher.
Yep.
So I noticed last year there was, my advertising was being less effective. I think there was so much going on. There was so much noise. Like you could watch TV about COVID and you could watch TV about politics. And I think, Facebook advertising for sure became less effective, at least for me, and then there was the split of Facebook to Parler, and you have to kind of rebound and adjust and say, hey, this isn't working, pull back before you sink your whole budget.
Well, and I heard that from a lot of authors, especially in the March and April timeframe, where, your advertising costs went way up because it was, just getting clicked all the time. But your sales were either not, stayed the same or not as good. And, so advertising cost, you really had to watch what you're doing. Otherwise you'd, end up with a huge bill for, I mean, you'd be hitting your daily max every day on whatever budget you set. And, for, not a big bump in sales. So, I mean, that really took everybody for a surprise when the lockdown started happening. And that kind of, if you didn't adjust, that kind of kept through July, I think.
Yeah, I mean, people were buying books like crazy, or so they were saying they were buying books like crazy. And book sales were healthy online. Yeah. But I don't know about them clicking through. I don't know there was some dynamic. And sometimes you don't know. Right. Again, you pedal your bike in a new direction for a while.
Yep. I noticed that Kindle page reads went way up, during that time, which was really nice. It's just that advertising had to be cut down so that when you hit your daily max, you were just done. Whoops. Yeah. Pen. All right, we'll get another pen. All right, cool. But I mean, that was kind of rough.
Yeah.
At least from the indie side of things, that's where I'm at.
Yeah.
Are
you in a good like niche You
I'm in
know,
dark fantasy and horror.
but do you drill down even further?
No, not really. Not really. I'm playing with things right now because I have 3 books that I've got published. I wrote and we're currently going through editing on it right now. But when COVID happened, I had 3 books, rough drafted out, and I
Mhm.
ended up just writing a whole bunch more. And
That's great.
yeah, it was really good, except for I found myself not being as focused because I had all these ideas. I'm just writing, and I didn't focus on what I should have been doing. So I
Mhm.
kind of got lost in it, and that's fine. And now I've rewritten a lot of things. So I've got short stories, I've got some novellas out, and a few novels that I need to get edited. And so I'm hitting my editor with everything I possibly can. Can you look at these 5 today? And not today, but and so I'm going through the editing process right now. So I'm guessing it's going to be a couple months before I actually release another one. But
Mhm.
my series, I've just been playing with it so much that I haven't really, you know, dived into to where I should be doing it. And they do fairly well. As
Mhm.
long as I'm advertising, they do well. I cut my advertising here in January just because I wanted to see what would happen. And my day business was getting a little short. It was a little hard to get people to pay me for a little bit. So it's like, yeah, we'll just cut out advertising. And they still sell.
Mhm.
I mean, they're still doing all right.
Yeah.
um and the podcast is doing all right and everything else, but it's something that when I come back with the new books, get them published, then I'm going to refine that a little bit, and I have some ideas on how to do it, but right now they're not.
Oh yeah. I mean, I have mismanaged my career every which way. But it's it's like I always have a good reason, right? Like family got in the way, or even though COVID happened and you would think that you would be sitting at home, able to write, but we moved into a fixer and my husband is really good at gutting houses.
Hmm.
So he was gutting the house and then slowly like building it back up. So there's utter chaos.
Sure.
I mean, I confessed to you when we got online that I'm coming at you from my laundry room because it's the only room right now that has walls and a door. So um so there are constant distractions, like my
Hmm.
son had a baby, and then things happen in 2015 when I was writing a lot. The buzz was for traditional published authors, hey, write a short story, write a novella, write whatever. So I wrote way too many novellas,
Hmm.
and I was in a lot of box sets. And I think I hit the USA Today list like 7 times with box sets. But then really the long-term strategy is to write like at least 5 books in a series, right? And have those books
Right.
out so that they can sustain themselves, so the series can sustain yourself. So now with I have 2 series with 2 different publishers, and I write novella collections with another publisher, and then I write some indie stuff with other people, so then it's like you cannot finish your indie series that you start, right?
Hmm.
So indie authors, I know some indie authors are like, oh wow, you're traditionally published, I wish I could be traditionally published. I'm like, well, but then you're not in charge of your own schedule, right?
Right.
So you have the option of really seeing your whole career and mapping out your career your way, instead of saying, okay, I have 6 weeks before I have to start writing this traditionally published book. So now what can I do in that 6 weeks?
Hmm. Which is a blessing and a curse all at the same time. I'm in control of things, and I can't complain about it. I mean, writing is my author business isn't my mainstay business,
Mm-hmm.
but it's getting better every day. But the one thing that I noticed is I was following some people and they'd say, okay, do this, do that, or whatever. And what learned fairly quickly was that just because it works for one person doesn't mean it's going to work for somebody else. And so
True.
I backed off on some things, and it's kind of the thing that I appreciate about being self-published is that it's really my journey to figure out where I belong and where I go, you know.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it's there's lots of experts out there that can tell you exactly how they did it.
Mhm.
And I love them to death because they have some really great tidbits, but at the end of the day, it's like, would that really work for me or not? There's a lot of things that work for romance writers that, I mean, you guys are masters at marketing and getting your books out there. I think you guys are much better than a lot of the fiction writers, I think.
I mean, maybe that's true, but what I have found is I have kind of a different voice because I write comedically,
Mm-hmm.
and I have kind of a rich emotional voice. So comedic and emotional don't always mesh. So if you hear anyone say, "Oh, you should be writing to market, writing to market, writing to market," well, what that means is, let's say there's a niche in Amazon, right? So Amazon has books by category that supposedly people type in to find a book, and that's why they add the category, right? I've noticed recently they added paranormal women's fiction. And
Yeah.
I'm like, do readers actually type that in? Maybe they do. I don't know if they do or not. So I have recently been trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to better manage this hybrid career of traditional and indie? Where does my voice really fit?
Mm-hmm.
And so I have a rom-com series where I try to pull back the emotion, because that's not what readers come for. They come for the light, fluffy
Right.
experience, especially if they're KU readers who are voracious readers and they want to read it quickly. Whereas when I write a traditional book, I have to slow down my pacing and put in more emotion and more of that romance and the specialness of the romance, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're trying to find as an author where you fit in, don't just think, wow, I'm writing a small town contemporary romance, I fit in everywhere. You have to kind of say, okay, what are these people publishing, and what are people on KU reading that's
Mm-hmm.
contemporary? And it was really this last year I really did kind of a deep dive. That was one thing that I did right, I thought, was into, okay, so how are they writing these books and making a lot of money in their series versus one of mine? Because I had I got rights back from 4 books from Harlequin in a series, and so I put those up last year, and they did pretty well in the beginning, but they take advertising to sustain a little more.
Mm-hmm.
So then I had to kind of say, okay, so what's the difference here, and really think about it.
The thing that I found with this little experiment I've been doing for the last month and a half, which, is kind of forced on me, but whatever, is that it wasn't like down. When I stopped advertising, it was kind of like a little bit straight. And, I
Yeah.
can tell that, I should probably start kicking up the advertising again, but I'm probably going to wait till April and then, just kind of see what happens. But it's been interesting, and it's been very interesting. I've got big, huge lists of, keywords and stuff. I'm kind of an SEO, I kind of like doing SEO and marketing type stuff anyway. But I killed Facebook ads, I killed Amazon ads, and the only thing I've got is a newsletter and some other, small media things. But the interesting thing that I also see, especially some of the new social media platforms that are coming up, it's like, do I want to jump into that instead of doing, this or whatever? I've never been big in Pinterest, but I know some authors that are, seem to be doing very well on Pinterest,
Right.
which is kind of interesting, but I mean, there's so many things at this point to jump into. I kind of want to be careful about what I jump into to make sure it's effective, but also that I know how to, measure that and monitor that on a daily basis, because you can get killed fairly quickly.
Oh yeah.
Budget wise,
Yeah,
you
wiped
make
out.
one mistake and all of a sudden, oh, that cost me $1,000. Oh, ouch. You know, I got 3 sales out of it. Oh boy, you know. But,
Yeah. Yeah. It's, you know, I have a writer friend she's a traditional author, you know, published by a traditional publishing house. And she doesn't want to do Facebook or Facebook advertising or Instagram or, you know, and that's okay. She does okay being who she is, right?
sure.
Who's to say that she couldn't sell more books if she did something more? But I find it hard to balance, you know, a Facebook presence and an Instagram presence and a Pinterest presence. And
Mm-hmm.
I think if you are passionate about one or the other, you do something really well, that's where you should stick to it.
Yep. I've got a friend who strictly does Facebook ads, doesn't even mess with Amazon.
Mhm.
He believes Amazon is just there to suck his wallet dry. And he does really well. He does really well with it, you know, and he's got, I mean, his advertising spot on as far as Facebook goes. Amazon, he has no idea how that platform works because he hasn't used it in 4 or 5 years, you know, or 3 or 4 years, whatever it was.
Right.
But, you know, I can't say that he's doing anything wrong because he sells a lot of books.
Yeah.
Know.
Yeah.
But me, I kind of dabble in everything. It's like, oh, look, I sold another book. Woohoo. You know, not that you know, but it's a little tongue in cheek. But
Yeah,
so
I get it. Hang on. Dog wanted out.
Oh, no, not a dog.
Right.
Which is cool. You know, I noticed you have a publication out there called Creating Unforgettable Characters.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. With the ugly brown cover.
Yeah, it's not bad. Why do you call it ugly?
Actually, I did that on purpose because I didn't see any other writing craft books that were that color or that had that kind of style of artwork on the cover.
Yeah.
So I wanted people to be like, oh, if they saw it one time, oh yeah, okay. I've seen that one.
I do like the Gone with the Wind reference up there.
Yeah.
Frankly, my dear.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, you know, that started because you know, my mom has passed away, but she used to say, you know, she used to be like, you need to finish what you start. And in college, I was one course shy of having a psychology minor.
Mm-hmm.
I found psychology really fascinating. And so there was some work that I noticed. I still am kind of a nerd and I read psychology papers sometimes to find out why people do what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And this Dr. Jeffrey Young came out with what he called schemas. Like, okay, this is how we learn. You know, if we run a stop sign and we get T-boned, we learn, boy, we better stop at that stop sign, right? So it's a scheme in your brain that creates this, and this is how we learn everything. And we learn things, we're more likely to learn things when the emotions are engaged. So if you think about when you're writing a character and a character journey, wouldn't it be interesting to try to solve some of these schemas? Because he came up with 18 that people go to therapy for that keep them from living a happy life.
Okay.
For example, there's one called Unrelenting Standards, which is, it can be formed. There are a couple different ways it can be formed, but one of the ways is your parents are they want you to excel and they push and push and push and push you. And here are the things that you need to learn to find balance in your life and not always be going, trying to excel, and then being disappointed in yourself or angry with the world about, you know, about not being able to be perfect all the time.
Sure.
And there are other ones like abandonment. That's huge. It's like the #1 thing in America that people feel intensely about is when someone leaves you or when they pass away unexpectedly and they leave this hole and people react a certain way. And so what I did was I was using this in some of my characters, and my critique group was asking me, you know, how do you figure this out? What do you do? And so I started to use movie character examples of, this is like this character you see in this movie went from here to here. Not often a Tom Cruise picture, because Tom Cruise doesn't really grow and change in his films. But, you know, Disney movies are quite good at character growth, you know, those cartoon movies. Yeah. So anyway, I did it as a presentation from our writing chapter, and then I kind of wrote it into this book. So it's got over 100 movie and TV character examples of these different ways that that characters start out, they have a backstory, and this is why they are, and you can motivate them, and here's how they would grow and change if they went to therapy, but you can put them in a plot that will help them learn what they need to learn so they can make their happily ever after at the end, if that makes sense.
Sure. And so that's what this book is based on, is that type of mentality towards building characters. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, one big romance example for abandonment is Cher in the movie Moonlight. It's Moonlight, right? Have you seen this movie? And so in the
unfortunately, I have, yes.
Right. Yes, my husband would say the same thing. So in this movie, before the movie starts, she is a widow. So she's been widowed. It was the love of her life. And she's lonely. She wants to get married, but she doesn't want to be in love again. And that's why she wants to get engaged to the loser, Ronnie or Johnny. I think it was Johnny.
Johnny.
Yeah. Right. And then Nicolas Cage was Ronnie, his brother Ronnie, right? And she actually falls in love with him. And it's the worst thing ever, right? For her to fall in love, because she knows it's going to lead to heartache. What she has to learn throughout that is he's not going to leave her, or it's worth the risk to love him. You know, at the end that's what she's learning. So it goes through those kind of examples for movie and TV characters.
Here, just kind of a psychological side note. Men don't necessarily not like those movies. We just sit down and begrudgingly watch them, so that we can actually show you that, you know, we care. And number two, that, you know, we get something out of it, you know? So, I mean, yeah, I'll watch this with you, but can you grill me a steak? You know, I mean, it's this give and take type thing. It's really a manipulative type thing, but, you know, because there's a lot of guys who like rom-coms, but, you know, they begrudgingly watch them because it's really a manipulation type thing to, you know, try and get something out of their wife. It's horrible.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I made, every Friday night, Netflix has a new movie. And a couple weeks ago, I think they had Moxie was on, which is about girls in high school. That I made my husband watch it. And it has a rom-com element to it, you know, but at the end he was like, well, because he's been with me, you know, forever. He's like, well, you know, they could have done this and they could have done that to really wrap up the ending. And I'm like, you are really good. Right. No time wasted. It's not just a rom-com. Sit there, eat popcorn, drink Diet Coke.
I was trying to be proactive, and I don't remember the movie titles, but my wife was watching this something kind of like that, you know, where it's got high school kids and they're, you know, and so she said, well, let's watch a movie. I said, okay, you know, and she goes, you pick. And I'm like, okay. So she watched that movie, so I'm going to find something like that, because she was laughing or whatever. And so I found something like that. And we watched it, and she goes, well, that's not what I was expecting out of you. What is the deal with you and high school girls now? I mean, are you like crushing on them? It was this big, huge, you know, all of a sudden I had a problem. It's like, I picked a movie I thought you would like. I'm sorry. You know, it wasn't usual sci-fi or horror, you know, something like that, fantasy type thing. It was, you know, a high school girl having problems and whatever, and there's no ninjas, there's no, you know, lightsabers or anything like that, and she really thought I was having a problem at that point, so she just kind of like, you know, I mean, I damn near ended up in therapy for that one, but you know.
Oh my gosh. Have you watched any of the K-dramas on like Netflix or other streamers?
No,
I
have not.
Those are? Have you heard about those?
No.
Okay, so K-dramas are Korean dramas
Oh, okay, yeah.
And they're usually short run series, and by short run I mean like 16 episodes. So it's like a humongous movie. And the thing about them is, I hate to have to read the subtitles, but the dubbed ones are really ridiculous. But they are so good at plot and cliffhangers. And there's one you might like. It's called Black, and it's about a Grim Reaper who can't remember. Grim Reapers are actually, souls of people who had a life on Earth. He can't remember his life previously on Earth. And he comes to Earth to take a soul and ends up falling in love with this woman. She can actually see the Grim Reapers. And it is kind of a light horror comedy. There's some romance in there. There's a mystery, and it's like interwoven, and there are surprise after surprise. Just when you think it's just about Grim Reapers and him not being able to take her soul, it just takes a hard right and becomes something totally different. So they have some, if somebody's having trouble like saying, oh, I don't always understand plot or cliffhangers or whatever, they're really good at getting in these hooks of things.
I may have to
started watching that,
belly up and watch that one.
Yeah, since I've started watching things like that, they've come up a lot in my network feed, my Netflix feed.
Sure.
And it's like, oh my gosh, look at all these K-dramas.
Yeah, and if I watch, I'll have to do it alone, because if I don't, my wife will start questioning my sanity again.
Well, and you really can't, it's hard because you can't, oh, my phone dinged, I'm going to check my phone, because you will miss the context of what went on.
Right.
So you have to be dedicated to my 45 to 60 minutes of this episode.
I'll definitely have to do that alone. My kids will not allow me to pay attention to anything while they're awake. So,
right.
Neither will my wife. Anyway, so frankly, my dear, creating unforgettable characters is sounds like a wonderful resource for authors.
Yeah, it even goes into how 4 easy steps in how to create internal and external conflict in a story.
I really screwed up that, because frankly, my dear, your book sounds wonderful, but
there you go.
I screwed that up. I could have done better. Anyway. And that is on sale, I think, for $3.99 on Amazon, if I'm not mistaken, or something like that.
For the digital, yeah. And it comes in if you want to touch and feel the book. I do like to mark up my craft books. I don't know. Do you do that, or are you all digital with your books?
I do the dumbest thing, and I don't know. I mean, when I buy things like that, I buy the digital one first and I read through it. It's like, oh, cool, I need this. Now buy the paperback. In the paperback's where I do my notes. But I bought a lot of craft books that, I've got a stack of them that I will never read again, because it's just like, it's the same drudge. No, that didn't help, or, okay, you're trying to sell me one thing and then you're going into this direction, so on and so forth. So I like to read the digital one first, because it's a cheap entry. And then if I really like the book, then I'll buy the paperback.
Yeah, me too. And before we moved from California to Oregon, I took all the books that were not my craft keepers. I might have gotten some nugget out of them, but I didn't want to haul them up to Oregon, and I took them to my writing chapter.
Yeah.
Said, please, free, take what you will.
Yeah, it's not to say they aren't good books; they just aren't good for me at this point in time. In my journey is kind of where I place them. There's a lot of really good books out there that hit certain things that may be good for you at a certain point in time, but I'm not disparaging any authors. I'm just saying it didn't work for me at the time, so I didn't buy the regular one. So
I mean, sometimes it's just a nugget when you come to, usually it's in the middle, when you come to a point where you're like, I've written myself into a hole. What do I do? And you pick up a book, and it can just take a few minutes to say, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now I'm back on track.
Writing yourself in the hole. I call that Monday through Friday. Every day, into a corner, down a hole, and then I find some way to get myself out of it. But
they do say most aspiring authors kind of get discouraged in the middle and stop.
Yeah, I'm lucky I'm ornery. We're running up on just about an hour here, so we should probably start closing this thing up. Any last words for your readers and fans?
Readers, keep on reading. Love you. Experiment. I love to experiment with different genres and subgenres. And writers, if something doesn't work for you, try something different. I actually took up a challenge from a writer friend of mine in writing a cozy paranormal mystery, cozy paranormal right now. It's far out of small town romance, which is my thing.
Mm-hmm.
But, just always keep growing, be curious, and stick with it.
And try new things.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, you know what? I appreciate all the time you give me today. I know you're really busy with the remodeling and everything there. So like I said, I appreciate, the time you've given me out of your busy schedule. And thank you very much for all the information. I think that's going to be very helpful to a lot of people. Plus, we hit on a few things. Like I said, that creating unforgettable characters, I will buy the digital version of that for sure. We'll see about the paperback, but I'm sure I'll buy the paperback too. I'm sorry. I'm a jerk. Anyway.
You're honest.
I'm trying to be honest here. Yes. But with that, I'm going to call this the show to a close. I appreciate your time again. This is Jeff Bacon with the DIY Writer telling you to have a great day and keep your chin up. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Please hit the subscribe button. I get a bonus for every subscriber, and I only need 1,506 more to become a full-time paid employee. Help me, please.